Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life friends, Justin here, and I'm having the giggles right now. We have our new podcast room in our house, and I'm here with an incredibly special guest today. And as I started kicking this off, all of a sudden the doorbell rang, and I had some choice words over that going off, wondering who was interrupting my podcasting. Anyways, I'm really stoked about this conversation today. It's going to be a lot of fun because it's with someone who's a really dear friend to me, someone who has the same personality type that I do. So basically it's like sitting down with myself in a lot of ways. And I just like spending time with me.
Some ways.
Mostly that
I would agree with that 100%.
Mostly we're Enneagram 8s, and that's about it. No. But I do want to say before I get going in this is going to be a conversation about the holidays. And we're really trying to help people in this season really get prepared for the holidays, because we want to see people get connected to themselves and get connected to other people really well and be able to process through a lot of what comes up during the holiday season, because it can be really stressful. It can be really messy. And I think that the person I'm bringing on here today, she just has a lot of cool insight around this area, because she's definitely been connected to a big portion of her process. And she's also one of my really close friends. And as we dive into this, and I tell you a little bit more about her, I just want to let you know that right now, Living Fully Alive is happening. We have the signups going right now at justinandabi.com. We've been talking about it. It's going to be a big year this year. Class is going to start January 11th is when it starts. And right now signups are all happening. And I think that it's one of the most valuable courses because of the feedback that I've gotten from people when it comes to relationships, and especially stuff like this. As you're going into the holidays, relationships are going to get messy, and you're going to find things that you don't know how to work through. And you actually need to get equipped. When we have tools and we get equipped with those tools to be able to navigate relationship and life, everything goes so much smoother. And all of a sudden we stop feeling like such big failures and so isolated, because we can rebuild connection quickly and process our pain much better. So just a heads up on that. You can jump into that whenever you get time, and bring some family along, bring some friends along. With all that said, my dear friend Katrina is here. And Katrina's been on the podcast before. And Katrina, I have had the incredible gift of Abby and I getting to participate with Katrina and Doug in many levels of relationship. One of our consistencies for years has been every Thursday night getting together and hanging out, watching some TV together, having some good laughs, processing some pain, whining and moaning about our spouses at times in quiet corners. Shh. She says, "Don't say that." But we've all collectively had this really safe space that we were able to come into and get lean on each other for love and connection. And recently, Doug and Katrina moved away from Redding over to South Carolina. Yeah, and that was a major transition point for that. And she goes,
I did do that.
And that's going to be part of this conversation today. It's going to be a really, really good part of it. But with all that said, hey, Katrina.
Hi, Justin.
What are you doing?
I'm just hanging out in Doug's office.
Yeah, you are over there
Yeah.
on the other end of Zoom.
Mm-hmm. It's nice to see your face, not just be on the phone.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. So nice.
I bet
Thank
it is.
you for that.
I bet it is nice. I'm glad I could give you that gift today.
All right. Well, that's too far.
You're like, I don't care. I'm not buying what you're laying down. So, hey, today, holidays. There's a lot that's gone on with holidays with you. I would love
Yeah.
to get deeper into your story and really hear pieces of what it's looked like for you. And I'd love to start with your childhood and what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. I have a very unique childhood story because I was born in Thailand and left when I was 8
So you
and
didn't
then lived
have
in
Christmas trees, I'm assuming.
I I think we still celebrated Christmas for sure. I genuinely don't know if we celebrated Thanksgiving in Thailand. I'm gonna have to ask my mom about that because I don't have any memories of it. But we did celebrate Christmas and have sweet memories about it. But it looked a lot different. Um, I don't know if we had Christmas trees because I don't know if that was a thing there. I'll have to find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when we came back when I was 8, that's probably when I really started remembering holidays with family and Thanksgiving around the dinner table. And we did a lot of like Thanksgiving for me was always with the extended family. And so we had all the aunts and the uncles and the cousins. And one thing my family does really well is food. We're all foodies. And so it's very important that what is on the table is like a lot of what we're planning and doing. So I just remember Thanksgiving growing up with really good food and lots of cousins running around playing. Grandpa deep frying a turkey.
Isn't it funny how like great food and a specific types of food all of a sudden can take you right back to moments, especially if you catch a whiff of anything that you smell. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in grandma's kitchen right now.
Yes. And I even like have a cookbook with all of my Mima's recipes where I'll make those for Thanksgiving because it is just such a like sweet memory to have and to experience. So
that is cool. Like that's so cool that I was just gonna say it's so cool that you have the recipe book. Like instantly you can recreate a portion of your childhood by pulling that out and actually creating something.
Totally. And it's definitely things you don't make on a regular basis because 2 cups of sugar and 2 sticks of butter and all of these things. You're like, whoa, all right. Mima cooked rich. That's what she did. But it is so sweet. And it's so sweet to now share with my own kids, like these traditions of things that we always have during the holidays. So I do love that. Yeah. And then that was probably till I was about 20. And then I moved out to California and was a student at the school that the church does there, and dirt poor. So for those few years, it was a bunch of students just kind of gathering and cooking whatever we could afford to cook.
Isn't that such an interesting transition around that age when all of a sudden you're like, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure out how to even connect to the holidays. And what did we just make? We made hot dogs for Thanksgiving.
We made hot dogs. We're calling parents frantically, like, how do I do this? I don't actually know how to make gravy.
How do you cook a potato?
I need so much help. So my mom got lots of phone calls in those spans of years, which I'm a decent cook, so I was able to manage not hot dogs. We still had turkey.
Okay, still had a turkey.
But it probably wasn't a very good turkey, if I remember correctly. And then after BSSM, this ministry school that I did, Redding's a really transitional area. Like having been one that left,
yes,
people are in and out of it a lot, and so all the people that I was doing life with were suddenly gone, and I didn't have a place to really go for Thanksgiving. I remember I was dating Doug, my now husband, and that first Thanksgiving when we were dating, we went to Chinese food for Thanksgiving lunch. And it was a really sad day for me. I actually can connect to like all the sad that I felt that day. Like, this feels really disappointing. I don't know where I fit in here. I miss my people. I miss my traditions. I miss like my family. I don't want to eat Chinese food.
No, God bless the Chinese, but I do not want Chinese today.
Yes, not on my Thanksgiving.
I really want my turkey with my family. Yeah, and I think that that's something that a lot of people can universally connect with, where all of a sudden you realize like things that made life feel like home, made it feel like, oh, I'm connected and I'm close to love. And all of that all of a sudden gets stripped out of their life because of transition, because of evolving in life. And then all of a sudden you're just like feeling so like, I need something that I can't get to right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think like those holidays just make you feel like there's a place where you belong.
It's
You where
true.
you're brought into this experience, you're brought into these traditions, you're brought into family, and you see like I grew up with this value for food that it plays out in every holiday, every day of my life. And
It's
I
true
got to be
because
brought into that as a kid. And oh,
yeah, well, it's true. You do value food. You like make food for like when we were around, you'd always make like Thai food for us, and you could feel the bond. Like there's something bonding universally for humans when it comes to actual food. Food is a place where like
mm-hmm.
connection happens.
Yeah, sitting down at a table and experiencing life together is such a deep way to form connection. And I love feeding people. So yeah, it was a really sad holiday to like, one, I'm not cooking and not bringing people into anything, which I love to do. I love to bring people into my home. I love to feed them. I love to create space for them. And I just felt really sad. And yeah, I don't know.
Mm. What did you like? Did that perpetuate? Was that just that moment? Did it continue on where you were experiencing holidays like that, or what started happening for you?
Well, after that, we had a really sweet group of friends that, again, writing is so transitional because people don't have like their core family there. So people are going away for the holidays or they're staying. You're not really sure what's happening. And after after that really sad holiday, every year after that for a few
Mm,
years, September would hit and I'd start to feel a little panicked, like, oh gosh, am I going to have another one of those
mm,
holidays where I just feel sad and disappointed? And um, we we got invited. Thankfully, like the family that I was nannying for at the time would invite us to Thanksgiving, or you and I and Abby
oh
had a
yeah,
mutual friend who would host, but sometimes she'd go home. So there was just always this panic around like, what am I going to do for Thanksgiving? And are we going to be alone or are we going to be with people?
yeah. Hmm.
And it's being alone day to day versus being alone on a holiday, like that feels like expounded. Is that the right word? Yeah. It just makes it so much of a stronger emotion being feeling
It,
lonely on a holiday.
exacerbated.
So yes, and so I would feel that happening. It's starting in September, like the panic and the fear of like that repeating.
Especially when it comes to the sense of attachment, because like when when we talk about the word attachment, it's or connection in the way that we attach to people, it can feel very abandoning all of a sudden when people
Mm-hmm.
are just gone and it's shifted on you and you don't know when they're going to disappear and when you're going to like, especially if there's sentimental value for an experience, like, oh, there's a lot of sentiment around Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I don't know if that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
turned upside down on me and I'm going to be wildly out of control, or if it's going to be another one of those good ones where the person is here, they facilitate it all, we all get together, and it's almost like this worry about our anchor point getting just shaken from us. Like there's like a couple yearly anchor points sometimes that we have, and holidays are one of those anchor points to go, all right, I belong to something bigger and I'm not alone inside of
Mm-hmm.
this world. And I can depend on, even if we're all scattered and doing life all year long, there's going to be this anchor point where I get back together with the people that I love and I feel cared about by, and all of a sudden I get to remember like, hey, we're good.
Yeah, and it's fun, it's memories, it's so life giving. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree with you. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're talking about getting invited into that space and
yeah, and I think it was really beautiful, but there wasn't any consistency there, and so kind of I processed a little bit. I remember with Abby and a few other friends, and was just like, I don't want to get to this place every year where I'm concerned and worried and panicking that I won't have a place to be
yeah.
or a memory to make. Because those things are just so important to me. So I kind of just decided like I don't know what it'll look like, but we're gonna start hosting Thanksgiving because I want to know that that this is going to be consistent and this is going to be something I can rely upon and build upon.
Which, by the way,
So yeah.
I love that something stirred up inside of you that said, you know, I have a need here, and I'm not going to be a passenger to whether or not this need is getting taken care of. I have a need to experience consistency and connection on these days. And again, I'm not just going to go by the whim of like what other people are doing. That's a really big deal. I don't think a lot of people think that way.
Yeah. And I can also understand in some ways when people are like, well, I don't want to do it because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, it totally is an immense amount of work.
It's an immense amount of work, and it's taking on something and hosting and doing all of that stuff. Like, not only is it a big amount of work, it's also another different type of vulnerability of like putting yourself out there to host and hoping that people
want to show up, participate.
Yeah, will show up, enjoy it, and want to come back. Like, am I making this something that people want to continue to experience, you know? So I think it's just putting yourself out there in a different way. Like, and I can
sorry. I was just going to say, I can imagine like on that note, like there's a lot of people that will be on a journey of like, okay, I'm going to host this, and they work really hard, and then it doesn't go the way that they expect. And the first time or second time they do it, they just get defeated and walk away from it. And it makes sense because all of a sudden it's like people didn't show up, or it didn't feel like the food turned out good, and I'm feeling like a failure. And a lot of times there's just a lot of overwhelm that goes on there. And again, it makes sense that it happens. And so there's a lot that we're risking and pushing through in order to even participate in that way. Yeah.
I would agree. And what I think I would say to those people, and what I had to get to that place too, is it's actually not about them. Like, I love bringing people into my home, and I love making them feel comfortable and enjoy and like at home and at peace and good food. But it's because I love to do it. Like,
so you're saying that you actually
brings me life.
You actually just create like joy inside of yourself in creating it. Like, oh, I'm just going to come alive doing this, and I'm just loving people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm coming alive doing the thing that I love to do.
Right.
And I think you are playing that. I know I was for the first few years just playing that game of comparison. Like, well, my table's not as pretty as that Pinterest table, or my food might not taste as good as this person's food. And that's never going to bring you life or joy. Like, yeah. The whole point of it for me was that I would be able to create consistency and a tradition within my own family. And at that point it was me and Doug, but like that we could lean into and enjoy and love. And it never looked the same. Once we started taking it over, I can look back over the last like 8 years, and it never looked the same. Like every year, like we've had our consistent people that would come, but some years we'd have 20 people. Some years we'd have 5 people. Some years we'd have like our nanny and her boyfriend. And another year we'd have students that we led missions trips with. Like it wasn't about like who was around the table. Like the point of it for me was that I got to do this thing that I love to do, welcoming people into my home and creating a space where they feel like they belong on a holiday, where they might have just stayed home eating Chinese food.
And I think that right, going back to what you were saying, I belong. That's one of the biggest things that I think that stirs inside of people around holiday seasons is, do I belong? Did I belong to my family growing up? Like that hits buttons. Like, I never felt like I belonged. Like, because all of a sudden you're just around more family stuff, and you're like, oh, it's my family again. And anxiety starts building. Why do I feel anxiety? Oh, because I didn't feel like I was seen or understood inside of this space. I didn't feel like I belonged often. I felt like I was on the outside looking in on my own family. It felt like we were so disconnected. And so, I think that it brings up that conversation, whether or not, even if you're consistently going back to the same place, the belonging, like, do I even belong inside of this space can be brought up by the holidays because of bigger childhood conversations. And I think that to feel like we don't belong and there is nowhere to go, even in the circumstance of like, I just don't have anywhere to go, it can feel very rejecting. Like there can be that inner critic that starts saying like, you're not worth a space. No one really
Mhm.
cares about you. Like the inner critic ramps up hardcore during the holidays and really kind of weaponizes circumstances that are happening or not happening against us. And it can be a pretty big barrage mentally. For you, did you feel like there was like that barrage of maybe the inner critic that kind of like would create accusation about you not belonging and other things about the holidays? Like, did it hit you like with your childhood and stuff? Did you hear a lot of that, or what was that like for you?
Gosh, you have me going back a long time. I yeah, I would say that that was definitely the struggle that I had. It the trigger was, where am I going? What are the memories that we're going to make? But the underlying pain was, do I belong? Am I loved here? Am I seen? And am I wanted here?
Ooh, that's a good
Um,
one. Am I wanted here?
like being included and not and having a place that you know that people want you to be a part of. You're invited into it. And I think that's what a lot of our childhood is we're invited to this thing that our families are creating. And as we grow up, you might not, I couldn't afford to go home. And so what am I going to be invited into? And am I going to be wanted in that space?
That's a very interesting thought. Yeah. Like, do they actually, am I invading? Like, I can imagine. And I think
Yeah.
I've probably had that in the past. Like, am I invading on this person's space? Especially if you don't, like you guys and us, we have deep intimacy. We've known each other 13 years maybe. And you guys have been together
Mm-hmm.
11 now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know I'm wanted in that space. But when I'm especially entering into somebody else's world and there's not that depth of connection, the question is, am I even wanted here? That can be
Mm-hmm.
very real.
Yeah. So yeah, I think part of that journey for me was processing through those places and being vulnerable and real with the people around me about what I was feeling. And then just choosing to have a place. I'm going to create that place, and not just sitting around and waiting for somebody to create it for me or expecting somebody to create it for me. If I want to be powerful here, I'm going to have to actually do something.
What did it look like for you to have compassion on yourself? Um, like, were you able to acknowledge the reality of some of that pain as you were going through it, or in retrospect, or
It's funny because, like, looking back now, I don't know that I had the words or the emotional intelligence to know, oh, okay, this is what I'm feeling. I should have compassion for myself.
right?
I think now, so we just moved from Reading to South Carolina, and this is my first Thanksgiving that I'm not hosting, and I'm not with Justin and Abby and all of these people that we've been for a long time. And I'm reprocessing that pain of loss and loneliness of, like, it feels like I'm grieving like I did back then. So in this season, yes, I have compassion for myself. In the season,
Mm,
I can let myself feel that. When I would probably say 8 or 9 years ago, I wanted to take control
right. Your default
and
was just
I wanted
control.
to stop feeling what I was feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and I was still vulnerable and I was still real with the people around me, but I don't know that I got myself to that place of compassion of, like, hey, this is really hard, and it's okay that this is hard, and it's okay that this is sad, and you're allowed to feel these ways.
Do you feel like you've gone back to some of those moments and because right now what you're saying is like, I finally learned kind of like language and action steps to take to kind of take care of myself here and now. Didn't necessarily know how to do it back then. Again, I defaulted to control. But have you taken some of the love that you have the capacity to receive and give to yourself back to your history? I'm just curious.
Man, Justin's not giving any easy balls today. Not throwing any softballs today. It's all hard ones. Yes, I have had to do that. I think this season of holidays is the most triggering.
It's got to be.
And not because they're bad. Like, I probably have more consistency and traditions and hope for what the holidays can be than I did then. But there's that sense of loss of what I had,
Mm,
of what I used to get to do. And so going back and kind of looking at that 26-year-old version of me and just like, oh man, I'm really proud of her. I'm really proud of her because she was vulnerable, she was real, and yes, she did reach for control, but she also built something that was really beautiful.
yeah, she did. Yeah.
Um, and so as I think that's the places where I've gone back in my history and had compassion and love for that person. Does that answer
Yeah, I
your
think that that's
question?
helpful. I think that people, like, a lot of times we just kind of bury the past in the past and let it kind of become a stinking dead body that never actually gets taken care of. And the resolution really happens when we're able to, reflect and travel into that space and be like, oh, I can see myself. I can see why I felt the way I did. That matters. And I can see that I was trying
Yeah.
really hard. Just like, that's really kind. That's a very kind
And I'm
thing that we
not
can
going to
do.
go back and beat her up for something she didn't know she needed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just going to give what she needed, really. Give yourself what you
Mm-hmm.
needed in that. And I was talking about, I want to hear about this season. In a minute, I also want to hear about the traditions that you did create, because I would like to know, like, what made it special for you specifically, the traditions that you formed, because now you have 3 kids and, I want to know what that
Mm-hmm.
looks like. But what is right now, because this is going to be the first holiday season away from all of us and stuff like that. I
Oh,
really
you're
like,
going to make me cry.
oh, I want to hear what's coming
Okay.
up for you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think um, Thanksgiving went from this tradition with extended family to this tradition with friends that was really beautiful and really
Mhm.
sweet. And gosh, Reading just became home after being there for 15 years. I really hope it would have, but um, I feel like a college kid that's not having Thanksgiving with their family for the first
Mm,
time and is like, oh man, what am I going to do? So one of the beautiful things that is happening because we're moving to South Carolina or are in South Carolina, we are here, is we're so much closer to family. And so for the first time
mm,
in 13 years, I'm going to be having Thanksgiving with my family,
really?
with my papa.
Wow.
I get a deep fried turkey this year. I mean, come on, right? Deep fried turkey, venison stew. I mean, he's going all out. He is the cutest, sweetest man. Um, and we're really excited about it. But I also didn't just shut down the sad that I feel
Yeah.
that I won't be with Justin and Abby and Courtney and anybody else that we would have chosen to include
Yeah.
on that day. And it would have just been so easy to put a cap on that pain and just say, but look at all this. We get to do this and we get to do this. We get to go see grandpa and we're going to go camping and we're going to do a lot of really fun things for Thanksgiving. But my heart still mourns what it's not going to be.
I think
Um, and I'm really trying to process through that and let myself feel that so that when I get to my grandpa's and get to be with family, I can receive and feel all of the things that it is instead of all the things that it won't be.
I'm sitting here and I'm getting emotional internally, because I'm connecting with, as you're talking, um, kind of how I feel. I suddenly am like, I feel lost. I think is a way that I put it. I feel lost about this Thanksgiving. Um, I mean, there was something. You turn the tables. How, oh, how the turntables have turned. uh, there's there's something so relieving about Thanksgiving with you guys, because it was like, I know where I'm gonna go. I know the
Mm.
conversations I'm gonna have at some level. It's like, I know we're going to laugh. I know that the kids are going to be crazy, and it's going to be fun watching them do that. Um, yeah. And then all of a sudden I'm connecting to, it's interesting because for me, if we bring it into my story a little bit, as messy as my home was, there was a way that the holidays were also really good. My mom had an amazing way of setting up traditions.
Mm.
There was always that, um, there was always a Christmas countdown board that hung up, and we pulled it down every day, counting down to Christmas. And there was always that tree, and there was always the stockings, and there was every morning, or every Christmas morning, where I would get up at like 5 a.m. where my mom was getting ready for the day to get all the food going and stuff. And I would sit with her in the bathroom while she got ready, and I would go through the stockings, my stocking. I would get to open up my stocking with my mom and sit on the bathroom floor. And it was this quiet, intimate time of connection before everything got rolling. And I'm thinking about the traditions that we created, even doing gingerbread houses and stuff like that together, competitions. And I can feel like a piece of the weight of that loss that I haven't connected with till now. Like, it's fresh as we're talking about this and
You're
bringing
welcome.
it up. Shut up. You suck. I can't stand you. I'm glad you're gone. I'm better off without you.
For the record, I'm the one that sent Justin the 8 song to make him cry.
That's right.
I like making Justin connect to his sadness.
Cry, you little baby, cry.
It is sad. It's a hard thing to process, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and when you think about it, it's like, this isn't my fault. Katrina decided to leave.
This isn't my fault.
You did this to me. But
you made me feel feelings.
But there's something magical, especially when all of a sudden because there's a lot of people out there that have messes inside of their core families, their family of origin, and they do find family in friendships. And that's just as painful, if not more, because you've chosen that family. You didn't choose your family of origin, but you're like, I chose you guys to be my family. That's why I keep coming back here. And to have that missing, I can tell I'm just feeling, I'm like, oh, I'm lost. I don't even know what we're going to do for Thanksgiving now. So, and
you can come to Papa's and have a deep fried turkey.
And I mean, I think that's something that was extra special too about you guys. We don't have our own kids, and being able to be around kids running around, I just love that. Especially when you'd bring other families in and they'd have their kids, and it was never an annoyance to me. It's like, oh, this is what Thanksgiving's supposed to feel like. Kids running around, being ridiculous, making messes. And parents trying and parents trying to navigate conversations over the top of kids yelling, and all the fun messiness that happens with that.
That's true.
And watching new memories being made with kids. Like, there's something beautiful about watching kids have their traditions built into them and getting to participate. And I think that we as a nation have started to veer away from our value of cultural tradition. Well, like, we've become more, I'm not saying entirely, I'm just saying that there's this more and more expansion of like, screw culture and tradition, and it doesn't matter. And we're just becoming this blob of like, we're all the same, instead of the unique traditions that make us so special and individual. And so I love when people are actually connected to their traditions and hold to them. They're really beautiful. But all that to say, did you have any other emotions coming up around it?
No, yeah.
You think what? Sorry, you cut out.
Oh, I think I covered it, but the most of it was just like letting myself grieve what this isn't going to be. Like, it's going to look different, and that's okay. And it's okay to be sad that it's going to look different. But I do think that if I didn't let myself in this season grieve what it won't be, when I get to what it gets to be, when I get to my grandpa's and what it is, like, I think there's going to be so much joy and life there that I wouldn't have had if I didn't grieve it. Because I would have probably been like, man, Justin would have probably made a joke about this, and I would have just been so caught up in what I missed. instead of like what I got to experience.
Yeah. And I do want to add,
Get to experience.
yeah, no, that's great. That's actually a profound point, because a lot of times we will not grieve our losses. And so we drag them into the present moments, and we actually skew the present moments that are available to be redemption. And they're meant to be repair, and they're meant to be like all kinds of stuff. And so then we end up regretting that we waste the extra moments that we have on unprocessed pain that we didn't just deal with. And so there's an invitation, even in this conversation as we're having it, like, hey, is there parts of your history around holidays that you've been unwilling to process? And so holidays get really ugly, and you keep missing out on the goodness of what holidays can be and what you can make them. And if so, then what does it look like to start freshly? Like, oh, I need to grieve. I want to actually embrace this year's holiday season. I want to experience it to its fullness. What are some of the traditions that you guys created? Because I'd just love to hear like what was special for you, because I hope that as you share about your traditions, people can think about the ones that they've had, or the ones that they potentially could create.
Yes. So after our daughter was born, I genuinely like started asking people what their favorite traditions were growing up all the time, because I think for me, when I see a really connected family, at the core of that is just like consistency from the parents. And so I think traditions are a part of that consistency in creating connection as a family. So I probably maybe went a little crazy with traditions, but some of my favorites, Thanksgiving, we try to do a kickball game in the morning for the kids to help them get their energy out.
That's smart.
Sorry. Yes, it's so fun. And when it's raining, it's such a bummer because they just love it. And it is the cutest thing watching these little kids run around bases. I mean, all my kids are 7 and under. So as they get older, I imagine we'll get more competitive and a little bit more serious about it. But as of right now, it's just like a really cute thing where you're not trying to get the 3-year-old out, Dad. You just let them run. You know?
Doug.
You accidentally missed the ball. After the day after Thanksgiving, we always would go cut down a Christmas tree, which is one of my favorite traditions. And if you haven't done it, please go do it, because I think it's just the sweetest, funnest thing to go out into the woods, cut down your own tree. The kids helped us pick it out. And then we would invite friends. We would all tailgate after we would cut down a Christmas tree. I am not a purist. I decorate for Christmas the day after Halloween. Because I love Christmas. Justin and Abby and I, the fun thing to do with friends was they would come over and we would decorate gingerbread houses together on Christmas Eve. That was our thing.
Yeah.
And some years it was a competition. I think last year we made a village together.
The village was fun together.
It was really cute.
I think that as a side note, like competitions are good around holidays. And then sometimes just bonding is really good, where we go, all right, we're not going to bond over firing each other up and getting overly competitive.
Justin. And then I always do the advent calendar, like what you were saying with your mom that she did. But we try to make it, because a lot of people's advent calendar is like a treat that the kids get every day, but we try to make it a memory, which I have to say we don't do every single day, but it's something as simple as tell a story together, or play a family game, or go for a walk, go look at the Christmas lights. Like we just try to make it something as a point of connection as a family.
That's actually super brilliant to have an advent calendar experience like that, where it's always like, oh, I can't wait for the holidays, because that's a time where we really dive into deliberate connection points.
Yeah. It's really fun. I'm sorry, you cut out what?
Yeah, no, I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, we also have a book that we love. A friend's mom wrote it. It's a little plug. It's called A Star of Wonder. And she wrote it, and it's a story of their kids and this little star that they, instead of elf on a shelf, it's a star that you hide around the house that the kids find every day. And we'll do scavenger hunts. um, for their Christmas pajamas. So they all get matching Christmas pajamas, and they do a scavenger hunt through the house to find them.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah. But I think that I hit them all, maybe. I don't know. One of the things I love to do too, which we might try to do this year, is I would get all the kids from my mommy's group. We would get them all together and we'd go caroling.
Mm.
And so we'd go to neighbors' houses that don't have kids, or like one year we went to an elderly home
Oh,
and just
really?
had the kids. Yeah. We had the kids sing them Christmas carols, and it was just the cutest, sweetest thing. And everybody's so happy to have it, have like a bunch of little kids come to their door and sing them Jingle Bells. I mean, why not?
I think that one of the things that happens is that we are so consumed with um, our jobs and so consumed with things that don't matter, that one of the reasons that we miss out on Christmas traditions like this is because we don't feel like we have the energy for it. We feel like it's too much work. And there is a lot of energy that's put into everything you're describing. Takes energy. It takes
It
planning.
takes so much work.
Direct engagement. But when you look at it, like, I know if you look at the wholeness of the season, you could get overwhelmed and be like, oh my God, there's all these things, the advent calendar stuff. And you could go down a whole list of everything that there is. Or you could be like, hey, you know what? All I know is that there's grace for each day when I'm working out, like figuring out how to make it happen. And I'm always looking back, feeling like my soul was overly filled because of the work that I put into it.
Totally. I think if you have a lot of really fond memories of your childhood, please go give your mom a hug.
Yeah.
Like,
It cost
give
her
her a hug. It's
something.
a lot of work, but I would every year. I'm excited to do it. Like, don't get me wrong. I pulled out that advent calendar and I was like, "Whew, here we go. I got this." Like, gave myself a pep talk. But I'm still really excited to pull it out, and I'm really excited for like what are the things, because every year they get older, the things that we can do
It
change.
starts transitioning. Yeah.
Um, yeah, because they're transitioning, and I think like today, Doug and I were saying, I think that they're getting old enough that we could start playing board games. Like, what if we did that one day, and just the things that we get excited about. And I think, again, things like advent calendars and traditions can sometimes also get wrapped around gifts and what are we giving. And the big deal for me in it is that it's like a place where we give the kids our time. Um,
Mm.
Not necessarily like a gift that's going to pull them away and like distract them so that we can cook or do something, but that it's like a gift of connection and a gift of time. And that's one of the things that makes it a lot of work, but also makes it like something that they'll really, hopefully, fingers crossed, have great memories of 20
Yeah.
years from now.
I think that's something like in the moment, kids are super stoked about getting like, I got a new iPad or I got like a new video game system. And in themselves, it's not an evil thing, any of that. I'm not, complaining about that. But a lot
Mm-mm.
of times parents, like parents settle for short-term smiles
Mm.
instead of long-term feels. They settle for the short-term smiles versus the long-term feels. And so that short-term smile was like, they got stoked over that video game. But the long-term feeling of it is like, I don't know, you gave me gifts and you're never around. And that's what ends up happening. I know
Mm.
because I've had the people in my office plenty of times. And it's like parents are just they're trying their best. They're like, I don't know, I know that my kid smiled, like I saw my kid get happy for that moment, and they don't play out the reality that kid's going to be like, okay, I got a video game but I didn't get time with dad. And
Mm.
time with kids and time with family isn't a burden. It's not taking from us. Like when we understand that we were created in and through relationship by our creator, all of a sudden we realize that this is our unique design and we are returning to our original design. And so we're returning to actually something that's fulfilling. Whenever we reconnect with our original design, we will always find a sense of fulfillment. It may not at the beginning because it feels awkward or it doesn't feel like it makes sense or it's difficult. Like it may not feel like that's the reality. But again, looking back, when you start having those moments repeatedly, you go, oh, I don't know why I was so much more happy this holiday season. Oh yeah, that's right. Because I was returning to my original design, actual connection with my family and my friends. I was being deliberate about that experience. And Uh, I know that for a lot of people, this is something I really wanted to clarify. A lot of people, when they hear about you coming up with some traditions that you did, are going to think like, I would never know how to create traditions, or I would never know how to do any of that stuff because my mind isn't wired that way because I never watched it modeled. And so one of the things that I
Mm,
want people to understand is you may not have had it modeled. You may not have had connection modeled to you, how to make
mm-hmm.
things special because you were just handed a gift or you're handed nothing at all and you didn't really exist to your parents through the holidays or your extended family. I don't know, that could have happened. And I'm sorry if that happened. But then that begins the like curiosity journey because if we can learn to walk and we can learn to talk and we can learn to do all the other things that we can do, we can learn this component, which is the relational component. We're not permanently broken. And what you did, Katrina, is you asked, again, going back to, I wouldn't even know how to create maybe what traditions I should be creating. So I'm going to ask a bunch of people. And that's a really powerful step and it's vulnerable, right? At times for some people to even take the risk of like, I'm going to ask others about tradition because I don't know how to do it or what I should be doing. And you can get this gathering of information. You go, all right, what are the fun ones I want to try this year?
Mm-hmm.
But
And
it's that easy.
there
Go
have
ahead.
been traditions that we've done that we've kind of, this doesn't work for us. There's
You're right.
things
This
we've
isn't
done that
us.
doesn't work, and there's things that we find that does work. And I think each family is unique, each person is unique, and you're going to figure out what works for you. And there's so many resources out there, like just thousands. I mean, just Pinterest alone, that's all you need.
Well, I like
If
that.
you want to find a tradition. Um,
One of
Sorry,
the,
what you're going to say?
Well, I mean, I like that you're saying like, look, if it's not even people, you can hit Pinterest. You can Google. This is the power of Google. I say this to employees all the time when they're like, how do I do this? I don't know. Google it.
Mm-hmm.
Google is the brain of the universe. And you're going to find a blog that's going to give you all that information. We are not powerless with in this day of technology to things happening to us. We can ask a lot of questions that Google is going to make available to us.
So true.
But I would suggest not immediately jumping to Google and not immediately jumping to Pinterest because I think the journey of discovery, especially the relational aspect of engaging friends and
Mm-hmm.
extended family, is super powerful because it's that journey along the way of the relationship that's like, oh, okay, so I asked people, we connected, we laughed, we even cried about stuff came up, memories for them came up that they shared with me, and we shared intimate moments as they were sharing on traditions and things that they love. That was heartwarming for me. And then at the end of the day, I maybe didn't have enough or things didn't land of what I thought would be me. So then I hit up Google and I hit up Pinterest and I look for even deeper things that might connect to my heart.
Yeah. And I think hearing other people's stories is what will inspire too.
I
Like
agree.
you're seeing the joy and the depth and the connection that person has to the memory, and you're like, oh, I want that. Like I want that for me. I'm like, I want that for my kids. Outside of food, like I love my family and how they do things, but we didn't do traditions.
Yeah.
We did food.
Yeah.
And so I had to like actually build that muscle of I want my kids to have these memories around the holidays. I want to have these memories with my kids around the holidays. And so I'm going to build those things. And like genuinely, a lot of people have traditions that do not work for me, like baking. I don't bake. I don't bake any cookies with my kids during the holidays.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not a thing that we do because I don't like it. And they make a mess. And so you're going to find things and people are going to tell you things that like feel overwhelming, feel like they wouldn't work for you, then try something different.
Totally. I can't help but think like earlier you're talking about the conversations that get inspiring for people because you see the joy
Mm-hmm.
on their face. You think about even the things where someone will tell an entire story. They're like, oh my God, I prepared all week for this one traditional event. And I remember we were bobbing for apples because we did bobbing for apples and grandpa's false teeth got stuck in one of the apples and he started choking when he was on the water. And then one of the kids freaked out and ran into the tree and it tipped over and a fire started and we burnt down half the gifts, but they're like laughing and they're going like, oh my God, I have
Mm-hmm.
this story. And you're seeing like, even when they talk about the depth of what went into it and even the messiness inside of it, you're like, oh, there's a rich experience that's a better gift than anything that they would have opened under the tree out of that. And then
Yeah.
you, like you said, you become excited because you're like, the prices I'll pay, let me add this too. This popped into my head. Control keeps us from the adventure of an experience because we want everything to be perfect. And it's actually the best memories are when we cannot control something and the adventure breaks loose. When the tree does start on fire and the turkey does get ruined, and then everyone had to go out and get duck from some local Chinese restaurant.
We do love Chinese restaurants here.
I love it for the right time of the year. But you know, that's what I'm, you know, when we look at that, we go, oh, the adventure was inside of some of the mess. And it was inside of some of the difficulties when all of a sudden, you know, our brother and our mom get into a fight at Christmas, but it broke into a yelling match, but then it turned into people crying, but then it turned into people hugging each other. At the end of it, you're like, remember when that meltdown happened between John and mom, and then they ended up hugging it out. And it was like years of problems got resolved and at the craziest of ways. And nobody wanted to be there in the first place, but it was like the best experience ever. Like we're waiting for those types of surprises in the holiday season if we'll just say yes to choosing in.
That's good.
Yeah. And definitely not having shame, like letting stuff as they unfold, not letting shame steal the experience.
I think too, like, as we're saying this, I am reminded, like, before I had kids, I didn't have a space where these traditions made a lot of sense.
Right.
And
I think that's really
for
good to
some
point
people, it's easy to think, well, that's great for you guys. You have 3 kids, but like, I think there are things you can do that can build memories, build traditions. And then like, it doesn't have to be a lot. Like that sense of consistency and joy that we get from the holidays doesn't have to be a big room of people. It doesn't have to be a ton of traditions. It's really just enjoying the moments that you're in and having the energy to create those moments. Yeah.
And again, going back to the energy, and we were talking about that earlier, there may be things that get sacrificed during the holiday seasons, and you choose to go, I'm going to let my life be messy in this area so I can participate in this, because the fuel that I get over the next couple of months of really engaging people, whether it's like dreaming for gifts and I'm out like shopping for people with friends and stuff like that, or it's the actual making of meals, or it's the playing of the games. It's like this fuel carries you through the next like 10 months of the year. Not that we don't create memories all throughout the entire year, but it's like, even through the year, you're like, oh, I can't wait for this year during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Like, it's going to be so fun. All the things that we're like, there's something running in the background inside of ourselves that's going like, there's something good still this year because I make it good, because I choose to participate, because I let go of control, because I embrace the unknown inside of it, because I choose to delight in what's right in front of me, because I've processed a bunch of my pain and grief so that it's not stealing every holiday season that comes up. You know, that's a totally different way to look at it than the other side of the coin, where people are like, oh man, there's another Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up this next year. Bah humbug.
Right. Or I have so much to do. I have all these things and all this has to happen. Like I have friends that will be like, oh, we have like 20 Christmas parties. And I'm like, I love Christmas parties. But if you don't want to go, don't go. Like,
that's so real.
If like, you don't have to do all of the things either. Like what I don't want people to hear from this is like, in order for it to be a joyous holiday and connected holiday, that you have to do all of these things. But like, you just need to find the things that bring you life and bring you joy in this season. And it doesn't have to look like stuff. It doesn't have to look like a meal. It what brings you joy and what brings you life, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Completely. Well, with that said, I know that we're getting here to wrapping up. I really like, do you have a list of things that maybe people could do moving forward, or any thoughts of like how they could prepare this year? Maybe some homework just on the fly.
Homework on the fly. Gosh, my head goes to like all the thousands of different types of people that would need different types of homework. But I think the main thing is check in with your heart and figure out what are you actually feeling around this holiday
That's
season. Because
good.
I think
It's a
sometimes
great start.
people get so busy with the holidays of like what you have to do. I know as a mom, people are already creating their Christmas list, Thanksgiving, grocery list, all of these things. Like put that stuff on hold and figure out what are you feeling around this season, and are there
Yeah.
things you need to process? Is there pain you need to process so that you can be fully present? Um, and is there something that feels like it's missing? Like, are you caught up in the things that you have to do, or are you excited to be making memories this
Mm,
year? You know, like, are you caught up in all of the to-dos and all of the shoulds,
mm.
or are you excited to be connected and present for the season?
That is really good. And I think that there's some of you that have done years of traditions and you've burnt yourself out in the sense of the way you approached it. You just got exhausted. You didn't do it well with boundaries where you invited people to help you. You ended up being the source of all the festivities, and you didn't allow someone else to take over, maybe because of your control, maybe because you didn't feel like someone else was going to do it. But there might be people on that side of the spectrum that, you know, you need to go, I'm going to give myself permission to not have to do that this year and maybe participate in someone else's tradition or someone else's
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Or I'm going to approach all of my traditions or the things that I do completely differently, where I'm going to invite the family. I was talking to a family the other day, parents who are amazing. They're always putting together all the holiday season. They've got grown kids, like a bunch of them with families. And the parents are still to this day doing all the work, right? And I'm like, do you think
Ooh.
maybe it'd be a good season to be like, hey kids, we want to do like the holidays as normal, but this time you guys do all the work on
Yes. Sounds like a good idea.
it. But adjust it so that you don't ruin and put bitterness in your mouth over how you are approaching it. If something is getting bitter, like Katrina's talking about connecting to yourself, and maybe the holidays bring up some sense of bitterness because of how you personally choose to approach it. And maybe it's time to be powerful and change that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, again, going back to, as we wrap it, this idea that this is a season to have compassion and empowerment coinciding, and being
Mm-hmm.
gentle with ourselves about what is coming up, about what we do feel powerless about, or like we feel sad about, or whatever. And then like, okay, then how do I change that? How do I heal? How do I make things be different? And it's really cool because like the most beloved person at any of those parties is the one that put it on in the first place. So when you become powerful like Katrina, everyone's like, I friggin' love Katrina. She's got like Thanksgiving
Oh,
under wraps, and I get to go over to her house and
yeah, right.
experience so much. And you just you become this giant source of everyone's soul joy, where every time they think about seasons, they're thinking about you and what you created. So there's something pretty powerful to that.
Thank you. That's really sweet. And I agree.
uh,
Yeah.
any last words to everybody?
Have a great holiday season.
Yeah, that's like a commandment. That's not like an invitation. It's like you will have a good holiday
You
season.
will.
You
You will
do
do this. Do it.
it. Do it. Katrina, give Doug a big hug for me. Tell him I love him. And yeah, everybody, again, Living Fully Alive is happening right now. Jump into it. Get signed up. Go search our website if you haven't actually looked into the deeper depths of it. You can learn more about it again at Justin and Abby. That's abi.com. Courses, Living Fully Alive. You can click on that and go there. And yeah, tell those kids, just smush their faces and tell them Uncle Justin's going to miss them.
I will. I will do that.
All right, everybody. Bye now.